Good morning everyone and welcome to this webinar on Navisworks and how to use Navisworks to collaborate on your projects. My name's Robin, I'm the Technical Director here at Nanomachine UK. Usually these sessions have been running with my colleague Mark. Mark is on some delivery today, so you're stuck with me. Hopefully that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, who knows. But welcome nonetheless. We're trialling something this morning, so usually every Thursday in the afternoon we do YouTube live sessions where we do a tip or a trick. I hit my head there. A tip or a trick or some news or a workflow on something to do with typically the Autodesk software. We thought that we'd broadcast today both live on YouTube and on Zoom at the same time for our customers. So hopefully I'm coming through fine on both platforms. It certainly looks like I am if I look at both screens here. And hopefully I'm loud and clear. But if anyone has any issues with volume or feedback, just let me know and I'll tweak the settings as we go. But thank you for joining us. So as I say, today's session really is focusing on collaborating using Navisworks. So for those of you that haven't joined these sessions before, these product demo sessions, if you check out our YouTube channel, firstly give us a like, give us a subscribe and turn on notifications so you can see when we go live. You'll see all of the previous videos that have led up to this point from my colleague Mark. And he's gone through everything from how to work with Revit, how to navigate the interface, everything from scratch. So almost some quick fire training, if you will, from nothing all the way through to rendering an Enscape and today onto Navisworks. So absolutely go and check those out and make sure that you catch up if you haven't seen them before. For those of you that are used to watching me on YouTube Live and the M Word, again, thank you for joining us if you're here this morning. And again, if this is of interest and you want to see more content like this, check out the channel and look at those other YouTube Revit videos from my colleague Mark that will really help you get started. So we've got about half an hour this morning to talk about collaboration in Navisworks. And there's a few things that I just want to talk about with the application. It's fairly straightforward to use, which hopefully will come through this morning. The product hasn't updated really with any new functionality for a long time. So whatever version of Navisworks you may have installed, what you're about to see today will kind of be relevant. I'm using Navisworks Manage in order to do clash detections this morning, but Navisworks has 3 versions. We have Navisworks Freedom, it's a free viewer. We have Navisworks Simulate, it's there for model federation and visual coordination. And then we have Navisworks Manage, which is everything beforehand, plus clash detection as well. So without further ado, we're going to jump in. So let's just make myself small down here and share my screen. And we've got Navisworks 2023. But again, don't worry too much about the version. This is kind of relevant for every version of Navisworks that's come out probably for the past 15 years because it's really not changed that much. That said, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Is that a thing? Yeah, we'll call that a thing. So what we're going to do first of all is just talk about how we can append and how we federate a model. So Navisworks is a completely independent platform. And what we have to do first of all is bring in our models that we want to collaborate or coordinate to create a federated model. To do that, once we've got Navisworks open, we just go ahead and hit the append button on the top left-hand side. Now, Navisworks will work with a whole raft of different CAD formats, and it's not just Autodesk-based functionality. So we can link in laser scans, we can link in files from CATIA, Inventor, MicroStation, Revit, Pro Engineer, Rhinoceros, SketchUp, you name it. There's so many different file formats on here. So it doesn't matter if you're not purely an Autodesk house. Using Navisworks, you've got the ability to go out and collaborate and coordinate with other files. And naturally, the IFC format, the Industry Foundation class, which is so crucial for digital construction workflows, is in there as well. Now, naturally, I'm going to use Revit because, again, this is leading on from those sessions that Mark's done over on YouTube in the previous, let's say, 10, 12 weeks, however long it's been, or so far this year, I think. And what we're going to do is we're going to just use Revit as a base for this. I'm going to use slightly different models because I want something that's got an architectural model and maybe an MEP model so I can coordinate them together. But I'm just using the standard Revit advanced sample project. So if you've got Revit installed and you want to follow along, just go to File, Open, Samples, and look for the RAC Advanced Sample Project and RME Advanced Sample Project, and that's what I'm using. The only thing that I've done is I've fixed the coordination of those models because in Revit, the MEP file isn't coordinated, so it's all at 0, 0, and it won't align properly with the architectural model. So all I've done prior to this is fix that problem. So what we want to do is collaborate these models and federate them in. We can append single files or multiple files at the same time. Just make the selection of either one or more files by holding down the Shift key and then go ahead and hit Open. Depending on the spec of your machine, the complexity and the size of the model, this might take anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes to open and federate those models. But what it does in the background, once they're open, or once it has opened them, is it actually creates what's called a cache file. And this is quite important to understand. So before I go any further, if I just save this away in the same folder and just call this collaboration model and hit save. If I go and browse to that folder, you will notice that alongside my Revit project for RAC Advanced Sample Project, what I have is a Navisworks cache file and the actual Navisworks file set of the actual collaboration model itself. And that's important. So whenever we federate or append in Navisworks talk, what it will do is it will look at the Revit file, it will translate the geometry and the information and the parameters, it will translate those into Navisworks and it will store it in a cache file. So the second time, the third time, the fourth time you open it, so on and so forth, it's much, much quicker because it's doing so from a very small footprint cache file. So you can see the difference here. You're talking half the size, give or take, between the Revit and the cache. Just be careful of that because if the Revit file is updated, you want to obviously make sure that the file updates inside of Navisworks and it's not just using the cache. So just something to be conscious of. But inside of Navisworks, I've pulled those files in. So once we've got them, working with them is really, really straightforward. It's the same as Revit. So, or indeed, if you're not a Revit user, any other 3D application. So using our mouse, we can scroll the middle wheel to zoom in and zoom out of the model. The focal point will be wherever my mouse cursor is at that particular point in time. So that'll be the pivot in Navisworks. If you click and hold that middle mouse button and then move your mouse around, that will be your panning. So moving the model up, down, left and right in a panning motion. If you then hold down the shift key on the keyboard, which is the little up arrow below the caps lock, or on the opposite side below enter, hold it down, click that middle mouse button, hold it in, and then rotate will give you the orbit tool. Again, that will allow you to navigate the model much the same as if this was a Revit model or an ArchiCAD model or a Tekla model or an Inventor model or whatever it might be. The functionality, near as damn it, is the same across all these different applications. And we can see that we get our model. It looks pretty good. It looks much the same as it does in Revit. Navisworks is maybe not quite as crisp in my personal opinion. The graphics might look a little bit dated, but it shows what it needs to show. It shows them nicely and they're nice and crisp. It looks good. So we bring in all of our models. So the first thing we can do is if we look on the left-hand side, we have a selection tree. It's minimized in my case. I don't have it pinned, so I can come and click it, let go, or click off of it, and it will go back into the side. If you don't have that open, we can go to the Home tab on the ribbon, go to the Select and Search panel, and click Selection Tree to turn it on and off. If you're doing lots of workflows with that selection tree, you've got a little drawing pin. I'm on a 4K screen, so I kind of have to squint to see that. But we can go and click Pin, and that will always stay active and usable on that screen. I want it to auto-hide myself personally. So on that selection tree, it's basically a model browser, but it's categorized. It understands the file format that we've brought in. Yes, I brought in a Revit file, so it's Autodesk to Autodesk, but it does the same with an IFC, does the same with other file formats out there in the industry as well. In that if I look in this Revit architecture file, we can see all of my levels. And if I look down the levels, I can see that I've got my 0-1 entry level, and then I've got all my Revit categories, so I can come down to, where are we? We can come down to walls, for example. There we go. Click, and it will select all the walls on the first floor. If I open the walls category, we can see all the different types of wall that we have within there. And again, we can filter down as much as we want to the individual component. It's quite useful to be able to do that. We can also work on that just by selecting an object in the model. It will also go and highlight it in the browser. So it works both ways as you would expect it to do so. The same for the MEP file in this case, but rather than walls and windows, although this file does have some walls and floors and things in because they are copy monitored inside of Revit. For those of you that don't know what that is, if you're MEP inside of Revit, you'll want to know where certain components are so that you can route ductwork around them and provision for building work holes and stuff like that to the architecture model. So you would use copy monitor to create copies of those components. So we do have some walls and stuff like that in the MEP model, but as you'd expect, we have ducts, duct fittings, so on and so forth. So we understand all of the model. Alongside the geometry, we also understand the properties that are linked to it as well. So if I just zoom in a little bit and select one of these window panels here, and just make a selection, just with my left click, what we can see is, what we can see if we open the properties palette, is the properties for that particular component. So if we go to display here and click properties, again, it's a bit small because I've got a 4K screen, apologize for that. But you've got all of the different properties, P-sets and their values from whatever application this is. If it's an IFC, it will have things like P-set window common or P-set door common or whatever component it is. In this case, it's Revit, so we've got material properties, we have the Revit type properties, so on and so forth. So it's as you'd expect. If you are using Navisworks more and more, take a look on the App Store, this little shopping basket, if you will, up there on the top right. Because what we can do with that is there is a little plugin. I've not used it for a while, so I think it's probably still around, called Properties Plus. It's a great little plugin because it allows you to customize and tweak that properties palette to show you everything within one tab. So that's a really useful tool if you're not using it already. So we can bring in models, we can federate them together, and we can start interrogating their properties as well as walking around. So, whilst we can zoom and pan and manipulate this in our view, the other thing that we can do is start getting ourselves into first person and having a stroll around. All of that is done under the Viewpoint tab. So along our ribbon at the top, go to Viewpoint, and then on Viewpoint we have a load of different options. If we say that we want to go to the Realism drop-down, we can turn on lots of different bits and pieces dependent on our viewing mode. So I'm going to put this into Walk mode, and when we're in Walk mode, I can turn on Collisions and Gravity. If I then click and hold my left mouse button and move my mouse upwards or forwards, it will walk forwards. Move it downwards or backwards, and it will move backwards, and it will look left and right as well. So I can quite easily move around my model. The further I move my mouse, the faster I'll walk. But because I've turned on collisions, it will understand that I can't walk through components. So I'll get to this door and I can't walk through it. So, come in and use collisions as you see fit. But that's really useful to identify if you can get around something or if there's enough, let's just turn that back on. If there's enough gravity and collisions, if there's enough clearance to get around a piece of geometry. And actually that works really well if we turn on third person mode and even allow crouching. This little avatar here, I don't quite know why he's bright red, there we go. We can change him in the options if you want to, but by turning on crouching, it will take that avatar, and if we come up to something, it will appreciate and understand that if we want to, quite a precarious position, we can get this guy to crouch to show that he can still access something. If that area was far too small for him to access and we come up to it, it physically won't. So you've got some nice generic coordination tools in there that allow you to do things within this model. So let's just stroll up the stairs a little bit. There's two sets of stairs here, which is a little bit confusing. Again, it's because we've got two sets within the MEP model, so it's probably going to get a little bit finicky at me going up them, which it is. Apologies for that. But as you can see, it will understand the collisions and allow you to walk up and down stairs and what have you. So we can pan, zoom, we can fly around, we can walk around. What else can we do with this model to check our coordination? Well, actually quite a lot. So if we go back to the Home tab, we've got some selection tools. So if I just say, go onto my Select tool, whatever I click, I can hide. And when I hide them, I can either hide what I've got selected, or I can hide what I have unselected. So I can isolate very quickly. That allows me to go and make selections within an area or of a given object and just start really interrogating around a given space or a given room. I do wish I would have hit these other stairs before exporting, but never mind, let's just hide them to see if it's going to let us go up those stairs. Typically it's split all the balustrades up, which is really annoying. I'm just going to hold down Control. You could say that I did this on purpose to show you the tools. I didn't. I'm just making that up as I go along, but hey ho, let's hide those and just make sure that I can now go to Viewpoint, turn on Walk mode, and indeed walk up the stairs, which I can. Bit of an issue with your head room on that, but we're okay. So we can hide things, we can show things, we can isolate things. We've also got some really good searching tools. So if you want to find something very quickly by its ID or by its category, we've got to find items up here. And these find search criteria, we can actually save them as search sets. So whenever we search for something, what we basically get, and again, if you're using a 4K screen, it's a bit fiddly, but we get a load of categories. So I can say, search the Revit architectural model and show me every, what have we got, category. Let's have every wall whose property type equals interior. With that, we can come and do lots of and criteria and build up a selection set. So where this is really useful is you could say, go and show me any object in Revit that's got the Kobe tick box selected. So go and show me every Kobe asset, and then hide everything else. That will give you a view in Navisworks instantly of your Kobe assets. We can then go through them and click them and make sure that they've got a uniclass code or a uniclass description. You could also extend that selection set to say, well, find them and then show me any Kobe asset that doesn't have a uniclass code and uniclass description, because then it wouldn't be a compliant Kobe asset. And we can start using these selection sets and searching or storing a list of them in order for it to be openable into several projects and start those validation checks or those collaboration QA checks. In this case, I'm going to say, with this category, let's go and find all of them. No objects found. It cleared my selection, which is a little bit annoying. There we go. Let's go that one there. Thank you. Find all. For some reason there wasn't one of those categories in this file, but as you can see, what it would do is it would go and find and select those components. We can then just isolate them very quickly to go and find. Let's just turn it off walk mode here and put it on look around instead. There we go. What we can do is go and see that it's basically gone and found all of the that type of component and selected them, so we can isolate them very, very quickly. Once you've found and looked through your items manually and walked around the model, it might be that you want to start creating some views. Navisworks has viewpoints in order to store views of several things inside of the model. In this case, what we can do over here is we've got a big Save Viewport button and then a load of different camera options. So let's imagine that we want to come in and create some views of this component. So let's come to the back here where we've got this entrance. Let's deselect everything so we don't have anything in blue. Make sure everything's turned on. Let me just highlight this tree and hide it because it's in the way. And then what we can do with this particular view is we can say that we want to save a viewpoint. When we hit Save Viewpoint, it creates this, this folder here, so 3D View, and then we can come in and give this view a name. So let's just say this is the rear entrance. Then wherever we are inside of Navisworks, if we click that rear entrance view, it will take us directly to it. More importantly, if we create a load of these views and share this file with someone using Navisworks Freedom or the viewer, they can go and look at different aspects or different elements or different locations of the building very easily, just using one of those buttons, which is really, really beneficial. We can also use those viewports to create walkthroughs. Should you really want to, under Save Viewport, we have a record button, and using that record button, we can start recording, do a little animation, stop recording, and then we will have loads of frames saved for that animation. If we then select it and hit play, it will play back the animation in the viewport. Okay? Typically, I don't use Navisworks for that purpose. We have tools like Twinmotion and Enscape that are far better for that nowadays. But this can go quite far. You can add scripts whereby if you get close to a door, the doors will open and all that malarkey. Again, I personally don't use it for that myself anymore, but you can. It's quick and easy to do, and if you've got no other tools, it's quite a nice way to create a walkthrough or an animation around the model for someone who isn't so familiar with navigating around in 3D. Other things that you can do within those viewpoints once you've got them saved is you can change your camera, so you can make them ortho, you can make them perspective, you can change the field of view, you can tweak them and adjust them any way you see fit. Yes, we do have some rendering styles. They're not really rendering styles for me. I put this on full render and give it a couple of seconds and put it on full lights and give it a couple of seconds. It will start using some textures that exist in this case with inside of Revit, and it looks okay. We get slightly nicer looking grass. It's not rendered. Use Twinmotion or Enscape, guys, but it's there if you want to. I prefer to keep it on shaded mode just to use Navisworks in the way that it's designed to be used. We can also come in and start sectioning. So if we enable sectioning, it opens up this sectioning tools tab at the top, and then we can essentially turn section planes on or off and start moving them around with the triad or gizmo that comes up here. So I can come in and start putting sections on like so. And again, I can go to my viewport and I could save a viewport in that particular position with the section turned on. So all sorts of bells and whistles in there to allow you to start making some collaborative views within that model. Now that's all well and good, but I want to actually collaborate or coordinate this properly. So I want to do some clash detection. So as well as working with very large files, and I'll kind of give you a sense in that in a second just before we finish, Navisworks is fantastic at doing clashes. Navisworks Manage, that is. So once you are in the model, you've federated everything together, you've put a save on, you've maybe had a little look around and manually looked for any coordination issues or anything like that. Two staircases, for example, or certainly a staircase that you can't go up because you hit your head on the ceiling. What we can do here is we can start using some clash detection. So if you go to your Home tab, under Tools on the Tools panel on the right-hand side of the ribbon, we have Clash Detective. What we do, and this can float, this is supported to go on a second window or a second screen, or you can just pin it. I'm going to pin it to the bottom of my screen just by dragging it to that snap point here. What we do is we define a clash test, and a Navisworks file can have several clash tests in it. So let's say add a test. And for the purpose of this morning, I'm just going to do one. It's really easy to use this, so hopefully that's enough to get you started. But that test can have a name. So let's go in and call this MEP pipes and ductwork versus walls. So I want to check to see from an architectural perspective where I've got ductwork or pipework going through my walls. Yes, I could use interference checking inside of Revit to do that. Yes, we could use some other tools on the market to do that as well. But Navisworks works really nicely as well for that. Navisworks works? Yeah, so we create our clash detection test. Once we've created our test, we basically come in and define our rules, our selection, and then we can look at our results. So we can tell Navisworks to ignore things if certain conditions happen. So if it's in the same layer, ignore it. If items are within the same group, ignore them. I'm going to leave all of those off. But I'm going to go to the selection and I'm going to say, I want to select from my architectural model. I'll just do the ground floor and I'm going to select all of my walls. And then from selection B, I'm going to select my MEP model, and I want from my MEP model in level 1 to go ahead and choose my ducts, and holding down control, I also want my duct fittings and my pipe fittings and my pipes. With those selected, if I scroll down in this menu, we have a whole raft of other options. Now, firstly, what a lot of people don't understand is Navisworks can do many types of clashes. We can clash with 3D. We can clash with 2D, with this one here. So it will clash with line work. We can also clash with points. So if you bring in a point cloud, we can run a clash detection against the point cloud. So if you do an existing conditions model of the inside of a building that's been cleared out, we can model the new internals with Revit and then clash them with the existing core. So really, really nice workflow. You can also change between a hard clash and a clearance clash to make sure that either something isn't physically clashing or make sure that I've got enough clearance around the outside of certain objects for maintenance or access or heat or whatever it might be. In this case, I'm going to do a hard clash. Tolerance, very small. Hit run. It's very quick inside of Navisworks and you get results pretty fast, although if you've got a more complex model, it might take a few minutes. But generally, we then get a load of clashes. Now, Navisworks doesn't know what is and what isn't a clash. That's down to the human brain to figure out there's a problem there or there isn't, and also down to the filters that you go through and use to make it identify both the objects and the clashes as well. However, we've got a load of clashes here. I can come in and click them, and as I click them, let's just drag this up to the snap point here on the right now. As I go through and click them, you can see that it will identify and find the clashes. If you don't like the way it's visualized, we can change that. If we just scroll across in the window and go to display settings, We can change highlight 1, highlight 2, the colors. We can make everything else transparent. We can make the viewpoints update. We can animate. We can focus on the clashes. We can view, whatever it is that we want to view in context. So we've got some options there to customize and change. So I'm going to hide rather than dim. I don't like all the tessellation that you see. So I'm going to hide the other ones and just show that we've got that clash here. And then naturally what you can do is you could say, okay, great, I've got a clash. Let's go to my review panel here. Let's go to my draw and let's place, draw a cloud. Let's place, oops. Tell you what, draw freehand. Let's place a cloud around that object. Let's place some text next to that object that say builders works hole. It's not a problem, it's a duck going through a partition wall, they've just cut a hole. But we can come in, we can add that information, we can go to a viewport and we can save that viewport so that we have a view of that clash there. We can get it to save the red line markup, which I didn't, against that particular view, which is great. And we can get it to then show that when you start looking at that as well. So we've got the ability to come in there and start working with that information and adding information to it. These particular clashes now can be controlled. So each clash has a level of information against it. We can give it a name. We can create clash groups, so I could group all of the Builders Works clashes together so that we can just say, well, just flat ignore those, they're not a problem. We can change them to, it's a reviewed clash, which changes it to a different color. We can start putting information in there with regards to who's clashed it, who's checked it. We can assign it to people. You've got a whole raft of different options in there, including the ability to push these to a simple HTML report as well, if you want to. I'm not going to focus on that too much today because there's better tools using the construction cloud and the links between Autodesk Docs, Autodesk Build and Navisworks to be able to sync that issue management, which I just don't want to focus on today because this is about Navisworks. So you can create a report if you want to. So using Navisworks, we have the ability to open a model and federate several models together. We can look around those models quickly and easily and quickly, I've said quickly twice, with ease. Once those models are open, we can walk around them, we can section them, we can interrogate them, add red line markup and save different views to help us with our coordination tasks. We can then run clash detection, whether that's a hard clash, a clearance clash, and whether that's between 3D geometry or indeed with a point cloud, we can run our collaborative tasks and then report those results out either using Navisworks Freedom, a free viewer, or by pushing them into the Autodesk Construction Cloud or back to Revit using a switchback tool. And really, that's kind of all I wanted to show in Navisworks today. So I did warn you, a whistle-stop tour, but actually you can go through quite a lot in a very short space of time when it comes to Navisworks. And if I just want to end on one thing, and I alluded to this earlier, and that's the way that Navisworks handles files. So just really to reiterate, Navisworks is fantastic with very detailed and very large files, whether it's large with regards to complexity or large with regards to scale. So I've actually got a Navisworks file here, and this is just in the samples, of the central bath. And let's just come onto viewpoint and put that onto orbit. You can see how quickly this opens up and manipulates and allows us to interrogate this file. Yes, the buildings are only simplistic, but still, if you imagine opening something of that scale in other reviewing tools out there, it won't be anywhere near as quick or snappy to use compared to this. So with Navisworks, handles large models well, caches them to make opening and saving quicker moving forward, and allows you to do real fast collaboration and coordination, federating, visualizing, manual checking, and clash detections. And that really is kind of all I wanted to cover today. As I say, keep an eye on our socials. We regularly do these sessions monthly and weekly with our YouTube lives. If there's something that you want to see, please get in touch. Again, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll be running more and more of these in the future. But without any further ado, thank you very much for joining me this morning. I hope you've learned something from our session today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care and have a good rest of your week. Goodbye.